Hello, it's 11 o'clock, and hello and warmly welcome to this session on AI in practice. We're very pleased to see so many of you show an interest in what we're doing with AI at Schibsted, and we're thrilled to have you join us for this discussion on the opportunities and dilemmas these new tools pose. My name is Agnes Stenbom, and I work as the Responsible Data and AI Specialist in Schibsted. I'm also a PhD candidate at KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, researching strategies for responsible use of these new technologies in a media context. During the coming hour, my colleagues and I will offer you some insight into what we do with AI at Schibsted. We'll begin with a refresher on what it is that we actually do at Schibsted and our businesses, but then we'll quickly jump into the topic of today. My colleague Ingvild Næss, Chief Privacy and Data Trends Officer, she will set the scene and give you an introduction to the Schibsted data strategy and how that relates to our AI explorations. Then my colleague Sven Størmer Taulov, Executive Vice President and Chief Data and Technology Officer, he will provide some insight into what we're actually doing. He'll show you some case studies of AI in Schibsted. After him, I will talk a bit about some of the dilemmas that these new technologies are posing to organizations such as ours, and I'll share some insights into what we can do to mitigate them. Finally, and very importantly, we invite you to share your questions and reflections through a Q&A. To submit your questions, please go to slido.com and enter the code 1010. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation. So, what is Schibsted? Many of you probably know us as a publisher, and while publishing is where our roots are found, we're much more than that today. What started as a printing house established by Christian Schibsted in Oslo 1839, that has now evolved into an international group of digital consumer brands. Today, Schibsted is a marketplace, a digital math tutor, an online stylist, an online comparison site for prices, and of course, we're still a publisher. Today, we run about 40 different brands on a wide spectrum of different products and services. We're more than 5,000 colleagues across the Nordics, Denmark, and Poland, and our services have a staggering close to 800 million visits every month. Our operations can be split into 3 different business areas. We have marketplaces, news media, and a portfolio that we call Next, where you'll find financial services, distribution operations, and a variety of different venture investments, so startups. Last but not least, we own 59% of the global marketplace company Adevinta, which, described in short, is a result of a very successful rollout of our Nordic marketplace concept across the world. This rollout turned into quite the hefty business, and last year we spun it off into its own entity. Adevinta was launched on the Oslo Stock Exchange last April as the biggest company in 19 years. Each of our different business areas have an important role to play in society. Our marketplaces are key enablers of the circular economy. Our news media brands are fundamental building blocks of the Swedish and Norwegian democracies. And our Next operations are empowering consumers through increased transparency, where people can take loans at the best interest rate and buy goods at the best possible price. Schibsted is a quite clear example of an organization that's disrupted itself through technological and societal changes. We've gone from a pure publisher to a diverse portfolio of digital consumer brands. We've managed a shift from print to digital for the past 20 years, and now it's time for a new wave of changes and challenges. We're now entering the age of AI. But what does that mean beyond the buzzwords and the hype? And how do we make sure that we equip ourselves as individuals and organizations to leverage these new tools in safe and responsible ways? For starters, we need to make sure that we have solid data management practices in place. An expert on that topic is my colleague Ingvild Næss, who's now going to give you some insight into the Schibsted data strategy.
Thank you, Agnes, and hi everyone. I have background as a lawyer. I used to work almost 10 years in one of the large commercial law firms in Oslo in the technology and privacy practice there. And now for almost 4 years, I've been in Schibsted working on privacy and data trends. And I'll share some insights into the Schibsted data strategy and why having responsible and lawful data practices is really key to enable good AI innovation. A little more than a year ago, we made a new data strategy for Schibsted. And back then, our starting point was as follows. We do have a lot of data in Schibsted, but we realized that we didn't really utilize the full potential to the best of our users and business. That is due to both external and internal challenges. So what we did is that we analyzed the challenges and identified what we need to do. And as Agnes said already, data fuels AI, so our data strategy and our data strategy efforts are really critical for us to be able to work well with AI. In Schibsted, we believe that we can and should use data to develop better products and experiences for our users and customers. And generally, we need to use data to run our business as good as possible. And when we worked on the data strategy last year, we also realized that, magic will not happen just by getting in place common tools and platforms across Schibsted. We need to ensure that we have focus in what we do. And that is why we chose a use case-based approach. We now have a dedicated team in place, and we work efficiently across Schibsted to identify and enable concrete use cases where we see that there is high value in data across Schibsted that we have not yet utilized. Actually, one example of unique data that we have in Schibsted is the huge amount of texts or articles we have produced over the years. We've been creating journalistic products in Scandinavia and in Scandinavian languages since 1839. And while not all of the material is available in our data sets today, we have a huge amount of data, language data stored. And this type of local language data is really highly valuable, not least in an AI context. Sven will get back to that a little later. I said that magic will not happen just by using common tools and platforms. But of course, we need to have some common building blocks in place across Schibsted in order to be able to utilize the data that we have across Schibsted in a meaningful manner. The first thing I would like to highlight here is what we internally refer to as Schibsted as controller. And this is really important from a privacy perspective. I just mentioned language data, that is not personal data, but in Schibsted we do have a lot of data that we collect and use that are personal data about the users of our services. And then we of course have to make sure that we comply with privacy legislation. And then Schibsted is responsible for making sure that we process data in accordance with the GDPR across all our sites. And our users need to know that. And the key here is really that we have to streamline and ensure that we have the same privacy principles and policies that we apply all across Schibsted. I'll get back to some key privacy aspects in a moment. The other building block I would like to highlight is our login solution, Schibsted Account. We have the same login system across Schibsted, and here our users can have their profiles and also make choices and settings relating to data that are respected across Schibsted. So for instance, we have developed and patented a tool where you as a user can go to Schibsted account, ask to see all your data, and then this tool will send signals all across the systems and solutions that store data about you, and you will get access to it in a simple way. Then another mandatory building block we have in place is a common tracking across Schibsted. By having a common tracking, we can collect data in a consistent way and control how we do it across our sites. And then, not least, we have a common data warehouse and a common analytical model, basically to make sure that we have a common way of defining and making data usable across Schibsted. Our data strategy efforts are really critical to be able to have access to data so that we can explore the potential of AI. And data and AI are completely interrelated. Without data, AI cannot exist. And with poor managed data, AI will not thrive. So of course, good data quality is key. And I also want to underline that a really key aspect of working with data is to ensure privacy by design when personal data are involved. We must know where our data comes from, what it can be used for. We must have in place access controls. When working with data, we must avoid sensitive data and generally seek to de-identify data before we start working on it. And generally, we need to follow the principle of data minimization and make sure to keep the amount of personal data at a minimum. Just to mention some of the important aspects. And of course, we've done a lot in this field, but I mean, it's a really complex area and the development goes fast. New questions arise all the time. And in Norway, the Norwegian Data Protection Authority, Datatilsynet, they have just received funding and will start a regulatory sandbox focusing on AI and privacy. That is a really important and great initiative, and we in Schibsted have already expressed our interest. We would really like to take part and share both our experiences and also get input on some of the challenges that we see. Now, I will head over to you, Sven. Sven will give you some more insight as to what we already do with AI across Schibsted.
Thank you so much, Ingvild. So I'm Sven Taulo. I'm the Chief Data and Technology Officer of Schibsted and in the top management of Schibsted, and that says something about how important data is for us. So what I'll do today is to demystify a bit about what we use AI for and go really behind the buzzwords. And speaking of buzzwords, I think we make it clear that what we're talking about today is practical works of AI, and I'll try to explain what we're not doing. And here really the understanding of the difference between the artificial intelligence and the artificial general intelligence is important. And AGI, as we're called, is really the theoretical discourse around making an intelligent, almost like human being that can take their own decisions and work like independent agents, just like us humans can do. And you've probably seen the Terminator, you've seen Ex Machina, and I just want to say that's not what we're working on in Schibsted. But what we're working with is really AI, and there are tons of ways to define AI. And today we'll talk about the umbrella term, a term that's covering a wide variety of different tools and techniques that are very much in use today. And a major part of this umbrella term is what we call machine learning, or ML. And ML is the part of AI that we are working on the most in Schibsted today, and it tends to be the same for many other organizations that are handing out AI stickers all over the place. Machine learning can improve simplify or completely transform highly business critical tasks for a digital group like us. And during the recent years, we've had started to explore its potential in our products and brands in a variety of ways. And we have a great opportunity to set a high standard of AI use across sorry, I skipped the slide here. And currently we are working a lot on computer vision and natural language processing and generation. And we leverage these tools in a variety of ways across the Schibsted ecosystem. For our marketplaces business, our news media, and Next, there's a great potential to use these new tools in ways that strengthen up the product experience, business flows, and workforce routines. And if you look at the respective business areas, we'll see different types of potential benefits. Let me take a couple of examples. In the marketplaces, we're generating better buyer to ad matching so that you actually connect who wants to buy something to the one who wants to sell something. And if you've been to a marketplace, you've probably experienced it's not that easy to always find what you are looking for and the other way around. That is a problem where we can use AI. We have simpler and faster ad entry. So to post something on a marketplace, it sometimes takes a long time to put in all the different entries. But if we can identify what this thing you want to put in there, for example, by image recognition, we can do it extremely fast. And then we have better accuracy for moderation. People would like to put in a lot of different things on the marketplace, and we don't always want them to put in those different things on the marketplace. And I'll get a bit back to that. In news media, we work for even stronger journalistic processes. So how can we make things work faster? How can we make more faster content generation with high quality? And the journalism is always under constant cost pressure, so to make automation in the flows is quite important. And we would like to make it increased user relevance without distorting and making echo chambers for the users. And finally, in the next area where we have all our ventures, we're working on a lot of new business models and features that can work better by the use of AI. But let's jump into a couple of concrete examples. I just mentioned it. Computer vision is super important for our marketplaces, and that is a subset of machine learning. And in Blocket, in our Swedish operation, we're using computer vision to identify what category an uploaded ad picture should belong to. So if a user uploads a picture of a chair, we'll know that it is furniture. And this makes ad insertion more smooth for the user, but it also makes the overall quality of the service better, as more ads will be categorized in the correct category. Another example of AI in our marketplaces is found in what I later described as content moderation. To further protect our users from safety, we are strengthening up our human content moderation team. So we have a lot of people that are working with moderating ads with computer vision solutions that can identify content that contains, for example, sexually explicit imagery or images where text is inserted in an uploaded image. And the later part is usually that the one that wants to advertise this would like it as a proxy for fraud. So trying malicious actors that would like to bring the consumer into their channels and their established platform or their private phone to try to sell them, for example, illegal goods as drugs. And when it comes to explicit sexual imagery, you can imagine the trouble even for a human to analyze whether a picture is sexually explicit or if the advertiser is just trying to sell a pair of shorts or tight jeans. And there are a lot of people that would like to show stuff on a classified site that you wouldn't imagine. It's a quite complex issue, and we're only using AI as a filter. That means we're not replacing the human moderators, but it means a lot for our moderators that has to have a filter in front so they're not exposed to this at all times, and also that they can get tasks that are more specific when they are doing reviews of advertisements. So it's a more nuanced decision than an AI can do. AI can also be found in our newsrooms. And one example comes from one of our Norwegian newspapers, a coastal town, Bergen, that has a newspaper called Bergens Tidende. And their audience engagement team delivers quantitative insights, data analysis, and other solutions for enabling our editors to showcase journalism in new ways and to help journalists make smart choices in their work. So to better serve their broad group of readers with relevant and engaging content, Bergens Tidende strives for more diversity in their news coverage. A key aspect of this is to make BT more relevant for women across various ages. And in an effort to get more female readers and subscribers, BT is using computer vision to better understand who they are telling stories about, and specifically what people the imagery on the website depict. By estimating the age and gender of faces used in an article's imagery, BT's application of computer vision enables insights into how their news coverage relates to the demographics of their audience. So a spoiler here is that if you depict women in images in the article, they are more likely to read the article in itself. Image recognition is not only the tool employed in order to shift towards more representative news coverage, but BT has, for example, studied what topics and themes are most read by men or women, elderly versus younger, and locally versus nationally. They have ongoing focus groups and panels that take a more low-tech approach to generating insights to the editorial staff. And these are just a few of the efforts made to diversify the content that we produce in BT. So from our experience in Schibsted, this approach of pairing high and low-tech solutions is key to our success. In our next ecosystem with all the startups and venture companies and financial services, we'll focus on two examples today from our distribution operations. One example of AI put to use for environmental good is found at Schibsted co-owned Distribution Innovation and their route optimization tool. And just to give you a backdrop, all of the different news companies in Norway have gathered their distribution, meaning the way that they distribute the paper-based newspaper to all the households in Norway. And here they've been working on the route optimization tool. So the last mile delivery, or put differently, being able to deliver the papers and packages, because we're working on e-commerce as well in our distribution now, to the people's doorstep is a key aspect of the digital innovation service and the various Schibsted brands employing it. So you might have seen it if you're from Norway. You might be familiar with the brand Helt Hjem, Morgenlevering, delivering bread to the households, and Svosh. So every day, the delivery employees are assigned to various routes with delivery points along the road, regardless of whether the delivery employee is driving a truck, riding a bike, or walking. The system uses an AI system trained on geographical and address data in order to optimize the route and ensure that the most efficient path is taken. And as you will imagine, the route is different every single day. And this AI-powered planning tool is particularly important for the delivery routes of cars and trucks, as the optimal route will minimize fuel use and reduce our CO2 emissions. Another AI example from the world of distribution is something as old school as printed papers. So every day, newspapers are sent from our distribution centers to various retailers such as 7-Eleven or Narvesen all over the country. If there are unsold papers at the end of the day, they're sent back to the central and the retailers get a refund for the returned copies. A key challenge here is to make sure that the right amount of papers go to each store every day, and here machine learning enters the stage. So through the machine learning solution that we have recently built, we predict how many papers our specific store will sell during a day. And we can inform not only the distribution for how many papers that are sent to the store, but also to the printing of the newspapers. So I've just mentioned a few of our examples. I can deliver 20 to 30 more examples from all of the different companies that we're having in. And we're using AI in various ways across all over our portfolio. I really hope that you enjoyed some of these and that you enjoyed to see some more practical example of a group like Schibsted and what we're using machine learning for. And the surprise here is that we don't make any murderous robots around. Now I'll go hand over to my colleague again, Agnes Stenbom, who will talk about some of the very important dilemmas we need to take into consideration when exploring AI going forward. Agnes?
Thank you, Sven. So, as I previously mentioned, I work as the responsible data and AI specialist in Schibsted and research the same topic at KTH in Stockholm. I have a background as a product manager in our centralized machine learning team, but now I work with issues related to empowering responsible use of AI across our portfolio. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the many dilemmas these new tools are bringing forward in our organizations and others like us. AI is earning us incredible new tools for innovation, and we need to have a positive mindset in order to be able to identify how to do good with and through these new tools. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind that there are many inherent dilemmas to these technologies. To most positive aspects, there's a downside, a risk, that we need to find a way to manage, mitigate, or at times even just prevent. With algorithmic tools and services comes a risk of algorithmic bias, that is, human biases, prejudice, and stereotypes being built into algorithmic systems. With automation comes a risk of job loss. The list of AI dilemmas goes on and on. Sometimes it can be hard to understand how a dilemma like this might look in practice. So to illustrate it, I want to share a brief case study from Schibsted. To explain the study, I need to give you a very basic introduction to SEO. SEO, or search engine optimization, is the practice of optimizing your content for it to rank high in search engines like Google or Bing. This is done with the goal of having visitors go from the search engine into your own site. To be optimized for search engines, content needs to follow some SEO best practices. Call them SEO rules, if you would. In journalism, these rules are not always completely in line with common practices and styles. And this has led to a new practice at many of our news media brands, where journalists will write one headline for the normal article, that is the article that is shown on the news site, and another article that will only be shown in search engines and search engine results pages. For our site, Aftonbladet, which is the biggest news site in Sweden, that means that an article about the Swedish movie Tårtgeneralen would have a normal headline like this: Sanna kände inte igen mig. Sanna did not recognize me. And an SEO headline like this: Interview Mikael Persbrandt on Tårtgeneralen. Interview the actor about the movie. This headline follows the rules of the SEO game. It's informative, includes the sender, the topic. After having conducted a large-scale training program for journalists, Aftonbladet learned that journalists don't necessarily love writing these really dry headlines, but they prefer their own journalistic ones. With that said, traffic coming from SEO is a huge part of the Aftonbladet business model. Today, about 12% of Aftonbladet's traffic is coming from Google alone, so the SEO headlines need to be written. This situation led me and my then team to start thinking about whether we could apply the notion of hybridization into the Aftonbladet SEO process. What if human journalists did not have to write the SEO headlines at all, but we could use machine learning, or AI as the umbrella term? What we set out to do was to generate SEO headlines through machine learning, and we had two key goals in doing so. First of all, we wanted to generate SEO headlines for historical articles that didn't already have an SEO headline. Thereby, we wanted to gain value from work that we've already done, articles that we've already written. Also, we wanted to assist journalists in writing SEO headlines for the future. This would then be a quite clear example of humans and AI working together to create value. Journalists would bring their unique skills in creating journalistic content and headlines, and machines would generate headlines that would be ranked high for an algorithm. An important note here is that the ambition was never to create and publish the headlines without human intervention. What we sought to do was to generate a suggestion for human journalists to review. After trying different state-of-the-art advances in transfer learning and natural language processing and generation, trained on the full article dataset of Schibsted in Swedish, so articles produced by Aftonbladet, Svenska Dagbladet, and Omni, we found ourselves with a working model to try out in a safe internal experiment setting. This was very exciting news for us, as natural language generation, that is, generating new language, new content from AI, that's still a very young field in Scandinavian languages. But with our unique data set that Ingvild spoke about earlier, of hundreds of thousands of articles, we were able to train a model so well that it generated new Swedish content, new Swedish language. Exciting stuff. So we tried this model on lots of different articles, and for the most part, the results were exactly what we planned for. Journalistic headlines, such as this, a quote about mental illness, was given an SEO headline suggestion that better follow the SEO rules. In this case, that meant adding a sender to the quote, Socialstyrelsen. But unfortunately, our joy of breaking new grounds in Scandinavian NLP, that didn't get to last very long. Pretty quickly, we started noticing challenges for our model. As we, through our training data, had taught it to speak Swedish according to the SEO rules, the model was so eager to generate SEO-savvy headlines that it sometimes went away from the original meaning of the article. In one specific case, that meant that an article where the Swedish school authorities said, "School strikes for the climate, that's something that you should do in your free time." That article was suggested a headline where a more popular person, a more SEO-friendly person, had been swapped as the sender. So according to our ML-generated headline, Greta Thunberg was now saying that school strikes is something that you should do in your free time. I wanted to highlight this case just to demonstrate what kind of dilemmas an organization like ours can face in practice when working with AI. In this specific case, the downsides of misinformation, factual errors, lack of coherence, those downsides clearly outweighed the upsides from a Schibsted perspective. Ensuring that safe and true information is spread in society, that's something that we don't negotiate. So for us, the dilemma became manageable in practice, and we decided to not pursue the model until we've made significant progresses in Swedish NLP and NLG. But the dilemmas of AI are not always this straightforward. The examples of ethical misconduct and irresponsible AI, they're starting to add up. These scandals are not coming from an ambition or a want to misbehave. In many cases, it comes from a poor risk assessment and non-discovered weaknesses in their systems and products. Still, harm by irresponsible AI is being done both to individuals and organizations. We need to pay respect to the downsides of these tools, societal as well as financial. So how do we align the two, society and business? TSR, or Technological Social Responsibility, is a term representing an aim to match the two, business goals with long-term societal ambitions. The sweet spot here is for companies to act proactively and innovative. If mastered, companies can use new tools like AI in ways that will boost both business and societal goals. At Schibsted, we're determined to build an organization, an AI organization that's operating in this top right corner, where we're building tech for better lives. When aiming to do so, we believe that we need to be inward-looking. That means understanding our history, what we've done, where we come from, our current situation, and potential future risks. But we also think that we need to be very outward-looking. We need to consider external changes and radically new potential. So just how far does that idea of outward-looking go? My short answer is that it should preferably go everywhere, and hopefully to places we've never been and never will go. We need to sketch up radical ideas to understand where these new tools might take us. This does not mean that we should adhere to these Hollywood ideals of AGI that Sven was talking about, but it does mean that we need to equip ourselves and we need to be able to envision a completely different reality for our brands, for our teams, for our organizations. Envisioning a completely different kind of world, that requires visionaries. And here it's absolutely essential to note that the future of AI cannot be left to one specific group or type of person to decide. Diversity of thought is absolutely key. There are very few questions when it comes to issues around responsible practices in AI. There are, however, very many questions, and at Schibsted we try to consider them as we develop and explore AI products and services. We try to embed a dialogue about data and AI into our culture. We try to shed light on challenges regarding diversity and representation, fairness and inclusion, harm and redressal. We have a set of questions that we're asking our tech teams to consider, including self-assessments about our team's diversity and mechanisms for redressal or shutdown. One of the most important questions to reflect on is the last one on this slide. Can we understand our challenges and potential mistakes? Can we learn from them and can we improve for the future? And speaking of the future, at Schibsted, we really hope that you want to move forward with us and with AI in safe and responsible ways. I don't have the answers on exactly how to do that in your organization or your industry, but I do have 3 pieces of advice that I think might help you manage your AI dilemmas. The first one is to foster diverse teams. Enrich your teams with more perspectives. With different types of eyes on the challenge, you'll be better equipped to both identify opportunities and risks. The second one is to discuss your systems and data sets. Discuss what goals your systems are optimized for and if you've actually chosen the right training data to reach them. Think about whether there are structures of the past built into the training data that you're employing. Discuss whether you wish for your AI solution to enhance them. And of course, make sure that your data management practices are lawful and responsible. The final advice is to iterate. Rethinking and developing is an integral part to AI. Embracing iteration is a key step in improvement. If you identify downsides, learn from them and iterate your way to a better and more responsible solution. Finally, a key aspect to consider when discussing these new tools is the fact that data and algorithmic systems like AI, they are socio-technical. These systems don't just appear from thin air and exist in a vacuum, but they're built, deployed, and used by people within organizations in social, political, cultural contexts. Human beings set the standards. Human beings make the choices on when and how to use AI. We hope that we can all collectively take responsibilities for using these new tools and taking these opportunities in safe and responsible ways. With that, I'm very eager to open up for a Q&A with my colleagues. So we're now going to head to your questions and turn to Slido. So the first question is for you, Sven, and it's about who is actually in our team. Who is working with AI at Schibsted?
That's a really good question, and we really work hard to recruit more women and candidates that haven't been traditional applicants for our AI teams. But today, I must admit that we have a majority of men working with AI developments. But it's not only about the visuals and gender of people. And what is also important is to have a diverse range of thinkers represented at the table. And that I feel that we do have. We even have recruited philosophers to our AI development to challenge the way we're thinking. We're also trying actively to help build a future talent pool. I'm not talking about tomorrow, but in the forthcoming 5 to 10 years in our markets when it comes to technology and thinking around AI. And especially through what we're having a yearly summer coding camps for kids. And we think that education is absolutely essential to widening the diversity of teams generally, but especially within tech. And it's also a highly cultural issue. So we strive to be inclusive and a safe place to work for all kinds of people. And when we recruit in tech, many of the companies use highly masculine words when they have announcements for the jobs, right? Rockstar developer and AI and ninja and code king or whatever you call it. And we've been into that pitfall as well, but now we're working across the group through unconscious bias trainings to help uncover such unproductive stereotypes. So, for example, when we are recruiting for tech jobs and writing the announcements, and it's very often written by men, we would like women also to read them. We also want to have a good representation of female interviewers when we are recruiting tech people. So we're trying to be conscious about it and to really attack our own unconscious bias in the whole of the group.
Thanks, Sam. A question for maybe Ingvild, you want to answer this one. I like to learn and test things myself before I deploy it to my company. Is there a basic entrance level to learn AI?
Yeah, good question, and I think that's a good approach. I would actually recommend a free online course that is now made available. It's called Elements of AI. Really, really useful. You do not need to have any background or previous experience. I think it takes approximately 15 to 20 hours or something like that, so it's quite extensive. But through that course, you will really learn the basics of AI. So recommend that one.
Thanks. Yeah, I recommend it too. It's a great course, especially if you come from a non-technological background. It's a really great intro. A question about news personalization. So are you personalizing news with AI? And I can answer that one. So just to set the scene, we promote a lot of content and we publish a lot of content on our news sites that are not relevant to every user, to every reader. And if we don't manage to make our news sites relevant to individual users, we risk losing our positions as a news provider where users come back every day or every week. So we want to be able to create relevance and deliver on our journalistic mission, which is to promote the most important news to as many people as possible. To do that, we've built a solution that we call Curate. Curate is a way for us to help distribute the most relevant content to the right user, without ever compromising on our journalistic mission, that is. So again, a lot of the content that we publish is not relevant to every user, but it's also not relevant to our journalistic mission. For example, not everybody needs to see celebrity updates or flashes about a new type of dog breed or a specific sports team. So by defining what type of content that is actually relevant for our journalistic mission, not just an individual's interest, we can safeguard that content from personalization. So what we do with our machine learning powered solution Curate is that we make sure that everyone gets the content that we've considered important for our journalistic mission, and then we personalize the content that doesn't categorize as such. Too long and you didn't listen? We won't create more articles about cats just because you said you love them, but we can give you, we can make sure that you don't have to read about dogs all day. Long answer to a very short question. Yes, we use aspects of ML to personalize our news. Another question here. Where are you going next with AI? Sven, do you want to answer that one? Do you have an answer?
Yeah, we're definitely not going AGI tomorrow, and probably never with the size of company that we are. But I think that, we have a heap of exciting problems to embark on that is within our umbrella of our vision, which is empowering people in their daily lives. I think we have only scratched the surface. I think now that especially the business side in our companies are understanding what kind of problems AI can solve for them. When they're getting to understand that, and we're able to interact more deeply with the business, I think we'll see lots of interesting problems arise and be explored in all different parts of our company. That's practically where we're going. I think we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's definitely more potential to be explored here. Ingvild, I'm seeing some questions about GDPR. One specific one is GDPR a blocker for development of AI in Norway and Europe?
Yeah, good question. And as a short answer, I would say no, definitely not. But as I mentioned earlier, it's of course all about ensuring privacy by design and following the GDPR principles when we use personal data in relation to AI. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that a lot of the international companies, the data giants that have developed AI for years already and are really the front runners, they have not necessarily followed GDPR and the GDPR principles. So I think that we are now really at an important stage, and I think that is also why the initiative from the Data Protection Authority that I mentioned here in Norway is so important, where we need to figure out how we can really take out the value in data and AI, and at the same time ensure privacy by design, and comply with the GDPR. There are definitely a lot of questions still in that area. So that is really, really important to strike the balance right going forward.
Definitely. I have two questions that I will actually merge. One of them is, how big is your data scientist team? And another one is, what technology or services are you using? And I can answer this as I was part of our centralized AI team, which I guess is maybe what we're discussing. So Schibsted, we've created a centralized function, a team that will help all of Schibsted develop AI, or specifically machine learning solutions. This team is about 15 people strong, varies a little bit. But then we also have islands of competence across the ecosystem. So for example, for the service Prisjakt, which is a big brand in itself, there's about 5 or 10 people, tends to be a lot of guys, also with competence on these issues. So I'd say in the centralized team, we are about 15 people, and then we have many more across the ecosystem contributing to growing the competence here. And for the question on what technology or services we're using, it's a quite hard question to answer because it will vary a lot depending on where you are in the ecosystem and what the specific case is about. But what I can say is that we are employing AWS for cloud computing, and then we're employing both internal and open source data sets for our training. We're also building a lot of things from scratch ourselves, and these tools are evolving, maybe not every day, but at least every week and month. We're paving a new way, both as a company at Schibsted, but also as a community, the bigger AI community globally. Just recently, we were part of a big experiment internally where we had two great thesis workers coming in, two young theoretical mathematicians helping us work on churn prediction. So predicting when a user is likely to quit their subscription to our newspapers. Amanda and Alexandra, the thesis workers here, were paving completely new way in our industry. And that's just something that happens kind of organically. So we are using external stuff, but we're also building things ourselves, and the developments are happening quite quickly. So, one question about the Norwegian AI sandbox that you mentioned, Ingvild. Do you want to share any more thoughts on how we approach that?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, it's a really important and good initiative. I think that we would definitely like to take part, and I think that I mentioned some key aspects already, but I think that what comes on top of this is, of course, that to ensure privacy and sort of empower users to take control over their own data, it's of course really important that regular people can understand what is going on with the data and have effective means to control it. And I think that when we talk about data used for AI, that is quite complex and unknown area for very, very many people. So I think that going in a direction where we get some kind of standardization and can develop industry practice is something that we definitely would like to see. So I think, thumbs up to this really important initiative from us.
Agreed. Thumbs up, Norway. We have one question that is about what influence can individuals currently exercise over the operations of AI in practice? How do you foresee this changing in the future? I'll interpret this as individuals in Schibsted, but maybe it's a larger context. But I just want to go back to the use case approach in our data strategy that Ingvild mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, where we said that we have a dedicated team helping Schibsted take out value from data across the ecosystem. And that goes also for AI solutions. So if an individual in Schibsted has a great AI idea, but doesn't necessarily have AI or ML in their title or even in their organization, that doesn't mean that that individual can't explore that idea. So we have a team that will help utilize the potential of data and AI across the ecosystem, where individuals can basically send in and work on their ideas. So I hope that we will get a lot of more use cases coming from across the ecosystem with this rollout of the new strategy. Do you have any comments on that, Sven? How individuals can exercise AI?
I think you're spot on, and I think also the fact that it's a fairly new area, even though we've been dealing with this for some years. Our people that are working in the AI teams are highly engaged in what kind of topics they should approach and having discussions about how to do it. So it's in no way a very industrialized process, a highly collaborative, it's a highly engaged process. So in that respect, I think our staff is quite involved in the most exciting stuff, and they're having influence over how we're solving things and what we're going to solve.
Wonderful. I think we've covered most of the questions, and it's 5 to 12. Do you have any finishing remarks, Ingvild and Sven?
I think for me, I've been in Schibsted for somewhat over a year, and I think what I really like by working in Schibsted and seeing what we do on AI is that we don't just talk about buzzwords about AI and chatbots and stuff like that. We work on very, very concrete operational things, which I think quite a few industrial companies do. Right? They don't talk that much about it, but they use AI and machine learning to solve practical problems they have inside of their companies or for the users. And I think that way of learning how to utilize AI and ML is the only way. I don't think the best way is to, talk a lot about it, but the buzzword and make a lot of slide work and stuff like that. I think it's really in the practical, everyday life that you actually gain competency. So what we really need to do is to make sure that we connect the business side and our AI experts and make sure that we're able to identify those problems and learn from trying to solve them, because many times we always also fail, right? It's a fairly new technology, and as Agnes has shown, not everything works, but that's just the way it is. So that will be my final remarks, and also thank you for joining us. It's been great to see that many joining.
Yeah, with those finishing words, I will just join Ms. Sven in saying, let's explore more practical, responsible ways to use these new technologies, and let's build tech for better lives, according to the TSR model. Thank you so much for joining us today, and please do reach out if you have any questions or concerns. We're all on Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course, email as well. So, thank you for joining, and have a nice remaining Wednesday. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.